Hello, everybody joining us. We're going to give it a couple minutes here as people come from one meeting to another. As you join, just shout out where you're locating from, and yeah, of course, David, Philadelphia. I think I could remember where you're from now. I'm in Tiburon, California today. Seeing real 3D people.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Sunny Boston, and I say that, and it's actually sunny for a change.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
I know.
Right before this call, I got another 911 reverse call from my home in Oregon of 45-mile-an-hour winds hitting. So anyway, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's avoid at all costs kind of wind speeds for me.
Oh, I love that, Saul. You got your whole taxonomy there. Boston,
Yeah.
Toronto, London, Glasgow, Wellington. Oh my God, windy Wellington, really?
Yeah.
What a great little place that is.
That's awesome. It's where I studied. Spent
Oh, wow.
6, 7 years there.
It reminds me of a miniature San Francisco.
It's very windy. So one of the coolest things is that you get to see the weather come up from Antarctica. So if you're in a high-rise building, you can literally see the weather front moving up. So if it's sunny and then there's rain, you just see this wall of water moving up from the south. It's pretty awesome.
Wow. All right, let's get this party started. And we'll just let people join as they come. My name is Sean Hurley. I'm the community host for this. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Community conversations provide opportunities for engineers, designers, artists, and makers to meet in a safe, live virtual setting, to share expertise, get to know leaders in their field, and grow their community network. The sessions are always supported by Autodesk community managers to help guide the conversation and feed important insights from the community to Autodesk and support participants in getting connected to the expertise you need. And we've got expertise here today. All right, and we'll get some links in there. Perfect, thank you. And Diana, thank you for being the moderator today. Your line is muted to reduce the background noise, but we do invite you to turn on your camera, kind of give us a physical feeling presence. You know, we're not in the same place, but if we can see, you know, each other, it's kind of a different thing. If you have a question, either raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute, or you can use the chat in the session. The session is being recorded and a link will be emailed to you as well as posted to the community conversation site. Safe harbor statement is pretty simple. We just want to make you aware that any decisions you make on purchasing Autodesk products, that they're in the state they are today. If we make any forward-looking statements, that you still make your decisions based on the present state of the software. Again, my name is Sean Hurley. I'm the Autodesk Community Engagement Manager. I am a geeky technologist in all of that sense. I'm based in Bend, Oregon. So.
And my name is Jacob Small. I'm a designated support specialist and Dynamo form junkie based out of Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Saul. I'm the product manager for Dynamo, also based in Boston, Massachusetts, and describe myself as a curious human being. All right, so welcome everyone who joined today. Thank you so much for number 19 in our series. So a series of Dynamo office hours. So we're getting up there now, number 19, pretty cool, almost hit 20, pretty awesome stuff. And today we're going to be talking about the difference between things, or difference between Dynamo things, specifically focused on custom nodes inside of the Dynamo experience. And so as per usual, if you've attended these before, this is pretty familiar to you. We're going to have a presentation around about 20 minutes or so on the difference between Dynamo things. We're going to do a bit of a live demonstration. So, you know, bear with us if things go wrong. Cue danger music on that front. And then as always, a bit of a Q&A, and please do interrupt us if you want to. Raise your hand, come off mute, come off your camera and talk to us through this. It is a conversation for the community. So we really enjoy talking and sort of addressing things on the spot.
All right, so first up, since we're talking about custom nodes, it helps to know kind of what custom nodes are. The way I like to think of them is they're basically DYNs that are set up to scale. They're basically a collection of individual nodes, that are code that is packaged into one particular node and deployable as a single file. So as opposed to having to sort of say, hey, put the nodes together so they look like this and send an image to somebody or something like that, you can just quickly send out just a single blast and users will get pretty much everything they need, right? So you can see we've got the one custom node sort of highlighted here on the end. You can tell it's a DYF custom node because it's got sort of that node on top of node on top of node feel, and it's aesthetic. You can see it there blown up a little bit further. And if you actually were to go and just double click on any node that looks like that, it will bring you into the custom node environment, right? That will get you here so that you can actually start to look at what's happening inside that node, how the logic's actually sort of accomplished. So you can continue to use that. You can make some changes, you can update it. And again, because a change here is going to be a change to every instance of that custom node, you can quickly push those changes out to anybody who might need them. Big benefit is that it's again going to make graphs much sort of cleaner and clearer, enable that big sort of reuse of code, and also enables you to sort of build new features into Dynamo that it doesn't have by default. This is a view of the larger custom node environment, and you'll notice there's sort of a few big changes. The first one, your geometry background preview goes yellow, right? Anything in this custom node environment, as soon as you're there, you're going to see a yellow background as opposed to your actual geometry background. The second one, you're going to have tabs all of a sudden. They come in out of the blue. And effectively what this is you can be in multiple custom nodes at once. Now, these nodes will not actually execute. There's no way to even run them. In fact, notice there's no run mode down there on the bottom lower left-hand corner. That content and the capability to run there goes away. If you want to execute your code, you've got to go back to your home graph, which is the tab to the left. You can be in as many custom nodes as you may want at the same time, but only one actively executing DYN at any given moment.
Yeah, and the reason for that is so that we don't confuse the virtual machine. So there's only ever allowed to be one single executable running at any point in time, which is also another reason why we don't have tabs in Dynamo today. The notion of what should be running at what point in time and in which sequence starts to get a little confused and potentially difficult, but that doesn't mean we can't explore that space in the future should there be a need. Awesome. So why make custom nodes? I know Jacob has touched upon this a tiny bit so far, but really what you want to do is leverage some of the built-in efficiencies that this brings you. So it allows you to clean up graphs and essentially hide logic that is relevant, obviously, to the graph running, but may not be relevant for an end user to sort of invest their time and effort into understanding and learning. You know, if you wrap up a bunch of different micro functions into a master or meta function, then it really is all that you need to know. So this allows users to essentially understand graphs at speed. So if you look on the right-hand side, we have a giant graph doing a bunch of different things. This is going to take you time to really go through, understand every single node, understand why Dynamo is doing what it's doing, why the author of this graph has built this graph in this particular way. But in essence, you don't really need to understand that stuff. If you just wrap that up into two custom nodes, like we have in the lower image, it is going to achieve the same thing and still explain to the end user exactly what you're trying to achieve without them having to necessarily step-by-step go through the logic of your graph. So this means that it creates smaller graphs, and these smaller graphs are easier and more efficient to navigate. And you're only really portraying what's useful for somebody else or yourself in the future to come through and read again. You're not, in essence, sort of wasting time going through and leaning into all of these nodes that are maybe doing a function that's useful, but not necessarily pertinent to the actual graph space itself. So what we're also doing is enabling the update from a central location. And if you're a maintainer of a package or you want to have content that is updatable from a central place, then definitely lean into custom nodes. It enables you to really centrally control content and roll it out to users. So if you update this content once and then push that update out to users, then that is going to automatically propagate in any graph that comes through using that custom node. So instead of it going into every single graph, like the upper right one, and having to go and replace sections of different graphs when you change something, you can have Dynamo, in essence, do a lot of the heavy lifting on this front. So that enables you to be a lot more effective and efficient with your time. What is also cool, and we touched upon this in the Python discussion last time, was that you can leverage custom nodes to also help with Pythonic operations. So Python by default means that you have to deal with the ranking or the depth of a list yourself manually inside of Python, but you can do this using lacing and list at level if you simply wrap that Python node into a custom node.
Yeah. The other great thing about wrapping your Python in custom nodes is it makes those updates instantaneous across the organization, right? If you got a change in Revit API between 2021 and 2022, and now you got to change all your units API, well, save the package as a new version, update the node in there, and then deploy it out at scale, which is really great. We'll touch more on that in a few. So what's really the benefit to you as a sort of graph author to sort of maintain your own sort of series of packages? First one, again, it's going to be much easier to push package content. It's going to be so much faster to deploy than what we have currently. Again, that idea of sort of, do I have to go and find every time I've put this collection of nodes together anywhere that I've ever used it versus, you know, go and find the one centralized location and update it, and anything that references back to it sort of scales up. It's no different from really XREFing in a CAD block or linking in a Revit file along those lines. The next piece, it's going to make it much easier to quickly scale up your users and bring them into the Dynamo environment. It removes that intimidation factor, right? When there's 4 nodes on Canvas, it's really hard to be scared away from this and say, this doesn't look like it's too useful, it's too crazy, I can't follow your logic. It also makes it much easier to reuse that content over and over again, as well as manage your changes, right? So again, that idea of your Python code where you've got to sort of modify things in order to work in Revit 2022, you can quickly make that change as needed.
Awesome. So we can touch upon a couple of things to know around custom nodes. You know, new toys are always fun, so definitely go and explore the space and have a play and see what it can do and see what it can bring you and your workflow in your office. So essentially, Dynamo custom node, a DYF file, is very similar, not familiar, to a DYN file. So it creates a few new pieces of this puzzle. It also sort of changes a few pieces of the puzzle. So if you ever go and edit a Dynamo file, open it in a text editor, and you open up a DYF file, you'll notice there's a little bit of difference. And some of these differences are things like the unique identifier. There is a key called isCustomNode, which gets switched to true instead of false. There's other things that are needed to locate that custom node inside of the library, such as a category and a description value. So that when you hover over this custom node, you get all this additional information that tells you how to use it and where to use it, providing you've set it up correctly. And the system of creating a custom node, Dynamo is going to go and auto-generate this stuff for you. So while you could technically right-click on a DYN file and go and manually edit the stuff in, and it would work, it is significant work to do so. So I suggest leveraging the system out of the box to do it. As Jacob mentioned earlier, you can have multiple different tabs of Dynamo custom nodes open, but you can also have multiple different instances of a custom node inside of your graph. So if you have a function that is repetitive and your graph needs to use that function in multiple places, just like any other normal node, you can use a custom node multiple times, which is awesome. And one interesting trick with custom nodes is that you can have a custom node as kind of like a helper file, so to speak, and you can copy between custom nodes the graph content if you wish. So this gets around the inability currently to have multiple tabs of Dynamo files open. You could simply create a copy of a custom node and add content into that, or simply change the file extension to DYF and copy things through. It's not necessarily going to execute correctly, but it might be able to copy through. But one warning on this front is editing a custom node inside of this custom node, the yellow workspace that Jacob showed is going to automatically rerun that code if you're in automatic mode back inside of the Dynamo space. And if you're in manual mode, it's going to force you to rerun that in manual mode as well. So in essence, it is a live link between that custom node editing environment and the Dynamo session. So just be mindful of that. If you have a long running execution, say a file that is doing huge amounts of geometrical applications, then definitely consider doing a test file when you're building your custom node as opposed to using it on a live graph.
Yep. The other thing on that is it's important to make sure if you're going to set up any kind of piece that might loop or anything like that, that you've got a good way out too, because even when you're first doing that initial setup, right, if you just tab over the wrong way, everything kind of goes sideways and in a hurry. So how do we actually build up a custom node? As Sol mentioned before, it's much easier to use the UI inside the graph. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to sort of quickly place the nodes on canvas and build up sort of what sort of logic routine you're after. You're then going to select those nodes in the canvas. Any wire that's coming into the selected group of nodes is going to become a new input. Any wire that's going out of the selected group of nodes is going to become a new output. Inputs and outputs will inherit the instance of creation. So if you want them in a different order than what they are, after you look at your custom node, you're going to have to go back and do some sort of copy, paste, delete the previous version as needed. Once you got all of that stuff set up and you've got the content built, we're going to go through and right click on that canvas and then select create custom node. You'll get a little properties dialog that'll pop up like that, where you basically just fill out the name, fill out the description, and put which add-ins category it wants to fit in. So the name is going to be the name in the custom node that you see up at the top of every single node in the name bar. The description is going to be sort of the user-facing description of what the node wants to be. And then the add-ins category is where that node is going to be filed within the library. You can then adjust, once you get into the custom node environment, the sort of content value as needed in terms of, again, those order of inputs and things like that. And then when you're done and you're happy with the way the node looks and the way it's working, go ahead and save it and then pop back over to your workspace and you'll see that node actually on canvas has replaced the other content and it is updated towards whatever changes that you may have. We're going to do a demo of this when we get a little bit further on. So if it's a little bit unclear at this point, don't stress it too much. We will get there. Now, there are a few things to keep in mind as you're building this content up. The first one, you want to make sure you're not using any kind of class names in your node name, right? So what I mean by that, don't name your node, point or list or something like that. Be much more descriptive with it. And if you do have to use those pieces, you probably want to stick to sort of a lowercase version of that content to just sort of enable Dynamo to not have any kind of namespace collision going forward. Now, many special characters in your node names are not going to be supported. Space is a no-go, as well as the ones that are listed there on the lower right-hand corner of the slide. It's also really important that you fill out your descriptions, tooltips, and names in a way that's going to make it easy for users to find your node. Don't leave it blank. That's absolutely the worst thing that you can do. Put that content in there because it's going to enable, again, those users to sort of understand what it is that they're after. Again, one of the biggest benefits of creating these custom nodes is sort of being able to quickly allow users to adapt. And if you're to the Dynamo environment, and if you're not filling out those descriptions, it's really hard to know what is actually intended to go in there.
So if we're talking about creating a custom node, we need to talk a little bit about input and output management, because these are really the interfaces between the custom node and Dynamo and the Dynamo graph itself. So when you have inputs inside of a custom node, this is what the data from Dynamo through the wires, as Jacob said, is going to get pushed into that custom node. Then the custom node is going to get executed itself before it pushes the data back out the other end. So they're really important to get right. And as you see on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a bunch of different colorful boxes around a bunch of different things. And we're going to talk through those right now. So as Jacob mentioned, when you're naming the name of your node, your custom node, be mindful of the typology or the namespaces that exist within the world of Dynamo, but also be mindful when you're naming your ports. So you are not allowed to use namespaces as the names of your ports either. So if you look at the right-hand, the red circle on the right-hand side, if we want to call something a polygon, if we use lowercase, we're allowed to do that. If we had a capital P for polygon, it would turn green, as you can see a little further to the right, and it would actually not allow us to execute that custom node or to save that custom node with the name being a namespace. So we have to be very careful about that. This also is a good way to start, or a good tactic in essence, is to use the lowercase, because then you know that you want to have a polygon as an input into this custom node. Once we know the name that we want to have in our custom node, we're going to want to specify the object type. So if you want anything to be acceptable, you can simply use VAR, which stands for variable, which is awesome. You can let anything pass through, but if you want to dictate the kind of information that comes through your custom node, and you only want to accept certain types of information, in the case of this one, the upper input, maybe only polygons, you can specify that. So to specify the type of data that allows to go into your graph, you simply have to use a colon after your name and then type in the namespace or the object type of data that you want to accept only. So in my case, I have autodesk.designscript.geometry.polygon. You're not going to have to always clarify everything. If you create the custom node, like Jacob said earlier, it's going to automatically generate inputs and cover most of this for you if you have specific typologies coming in. And you're also going to want to be careful about this thing called rank. And so rank here is dictated in the green circle. And so the rank is going to stipulate what kind of data can come through. So object type tells you the type of data, and the rank tells you what kind of list association is coming through inside of Dynamo. So if we use the sort of open close square braces dot open close square braces, this means any arbitrary ranking of data comes through. It can be a list, it can be a list of lists, it can be a list of lists. If you have nothing, sometimes it's going to fail because Dynamo's custom nodes is going to want to have you specify the kind of data that comes through at the right kind of level. So if you're, when in doubt, simply use what you see on screen right now, and this should capture the vast majority of cases for your custom node, because this means any kind of arbitrary ranking that comes through is going to be enabled inside of this port. Then the object types in purple, as you see, we can specify double or we can specify polygon in the upper right. These are both showcasing different types, double simply being reference to number. You can also use int, you can use Boolean values, you can use a whole bunch of different things, which is cool. And then also, if you want to, you can specify a default value for your port. So you know in Dynamo, you have nodes, and some of those nodes have default values, which means you don't need to wire them up and have data coming into them. You can do the same thing for your custom node. And in order to specify a default value, you simply need to do equals and that default value. That comes after your specified object type and ranking. So if we were to put all of these together and we wanted to have a default value in the upper input, after the rank, which is covered in the green box, you also have equals, and we could specify a default polygonal type if we wanted to. So your default doesn't just have to be numerical data, it can also be a coordinate system, or it can be a piece of geometry, it can be anything that you wish to have as a default, which is really awesome. And then also what you want to do is be mindful of making sure that you have textual information or help text associated with all of your ports. And there's two different ways to do that. So you can either do the double backslash that gives you a singular line of text, as we see in the output in the green circle, or you can have the backslash asterisk and any number of wrapped lines of content in between as well. And what this does is this helps you have a guide to help users and yourself in the future understand what you're trying to achieve with that port. So if it's not clear enough, using just the name of the port, definitely put a help text in. I'd encourage everybody to do help either way across the board. And then the last thing to touch upon is for the output type, you are allowed to use a namespace on the output type. And that is that you cannot do it on the input, but you can do it on the output. And that's going to dictate the kind of, or the type of data that is coming out of that graph, which is pretty cool. When you thinking about things like node autocomplete, it's if you specify these things correctly, so you put an object type in, it's going to play nice with node autocomplete, which is a feature we've released recently. So coming out in, I think 2.12 has it, 2.13 definitely has it. You'll be able to use your own custom nodes inside of node autocomplete as well. And then the last thing to touch upon for input and output management is the creation order, or the unique user identifier of these ports actually matters to choose the location of your input ports on the custom node itself. And it's dependent on creation order, in essence, the unique identifier in the background. And so if you want to change the location, and we're going to show this live a little bit with Jacob later, but if you want to change the location of which input port comes above or below another one, you simply need to cut and paste those until you get it to the correct order. In the future, we're going to improve this experience and make it easier for you to do this without having to know so much sort of esoteric under the hood magic. But as it stands, this is the way to achieve that today.
Yeah. And one thing I will mention is all of this stuff, if it is filled out correctly, just makes the node so much easier to use, right? If you don't have that default type, for example, and you feed in a string instead of a number, right? If it hadn't said double here, and it would let me just pass a string in without throwing an error, it would just go ahead and process that data and return null. And then the user's going to be like, I don't understand what's going on. By sort of informing the user and Dynamo what it's expecting, it basically allows that user to sort of know why things are going wrong in many cases when they do go wrong.
Yeah, so for Jacob's case in point, if you specified you want a double, which is a number, and you input a string, then Dynamo is automatically going to pick up on that and tell you the problem in the warning bubble that propagates on the node. So it helps you to use the framework correctly because it's going to help you in the long run and help other people who are using those nodes. Cool. So leveraging this cool new node that we've created now, and where does this live and how do we get into it and all that good stuff. So Dynamo will load any custom node from your definitions folder. So if you're familiar with some of the previous sessions we had, we talked about the app data folder, and this is where Dynamo stores all of your package content. This is also where Dynamo stores your definitions, which is simply another term for custom nodes. So if all the definitions that are inside of your folder for any given version of Dynamo, in this case, I had Dynamo 2.12, these will show up inside of the library. So I had 3 custom nodes I had created, and these are showing up, as you can see, in the blue circle inside of the library itself. So we have Dynamo office hours is the category of my custom nodes. And then I had 3 different custom nodes under their own subcategories. And we're going to show you a little bit live on how this works with getting to the polygon, simple, and surface sort of subcategory naming conventions. And so what happens is these will show up in the library depending on how you create them, in essence. And that's what you see in the blue. You can then edit these by double clicking, as we've seen with Jacob earlier, to get to this sort of yellow section and then save them back into your definitions folder. So if you open the DYF file inside of Dynamo, make a change and then save it back to your definitions folder, that is going to be up to date when you want to use it in the future. And if you make a change and update your custom node and you have other people who want to use it, then definitely make sure you give that to them. And Jacob's going to talk about that a little bit later in terms of how to sort of ship and share content. And once again, remember that making automatic updates or saving and making updates to your custom node automatically updates in your graph space as well, if you're using it in the context of a graph. And then, as Jacob also touched upon, just be careful of weird loops that you get into, because you could get into an infinite loop situation, and that would start to cause some problems in your space.
All right, so let's talk about, now that we've built all these custom nodes, how do we share them out? You've got a couple different options, right? You can share out the individual definitions, or you can package them. If you do decide to package them, you could package them locally, or you could package them and distribute them through Package Manager. So in this hypothetical scenario, you are the coder here on the left, and you're looking to get your code out to this other person out on the right? So we want to distribute the content back and forth. Well, we know that first you're going to take the time to write up some code. Your Dynamo graph is going to be built and set up and functional, and it's going to do this happy thing. And again, we could sort of send over an image and say, make it look like this, but that doesn't really work. So we know to use a custom node, right? So we're going to package all that code inside that custom node and then send that piece out to our end user. And now our end user's happy, right? Because they've got that content and they can sort of work with it, right? However, unfortunately, we have another end user who doesn't have access to this now, right? Because we haven't set up any kind of mechanism to sort of get that out to them either, right? Now, ignoring that second user for a little bit, you obviously are not going to stop at one, because once you start to use Dynamo, it pretty quickly proliferates across so much of what we do in AEC, right? So you've got more definitions, and it would be really handy, we could take the time and pack each one of those sets of code into its own custom node and then email it out, but that's a lot of emails to sort of keep track of, right? That's a lot of files to save and distribute one by one, and that's where packages come in. Packages effectively allow you to take a whole collection of stuff and put it into one container that can be sort of more readily distributed to end users. Once that's there, that end user now has access to all of that content that you've put in there. If you distribute more content through and then just send out that new version of the package or deploy that new version of the package, they've got everything and it's updating constantly and consistently, as opposed to sort of doing it one at a time. Now, as handy as that is, we still haven't sort of enabled that next user to sort of get their hands on any of that content, right? So while we've got that package, we don't have much that we can really do with it just yet, right? So we might find we've built up many packages. The key piece here is, how do we distribute them at scale? How can we make it so those end users don't have to come over and go, hey, Jacob, you have that package that does this. Can you give it to me? Hey, Sol, I saw you had that package that does this. Where can I get a copy of that? And rather than hosting it up on the website or something like that, the Dynamo teams actually built a package manager. And this is basically a collection of all these different packages produced by the larger community, where any user at any point can just go right to that store and download the version of the package that they're after. If they want the latest and greatest, they can get that. If they want the version that you released 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, way back in the Dynamo 2016 days, yeah, that stuff's all there. It's there for use. Go ahead and work with it. And again, it's not just that one user, it's both users, all users, wherever they may be. So this really allows your code to sort of take off at scale. You're no longer sort of limited to what I can send to individual users. And that's the big benefit of the package manager.
Thank you, Jacob. So now that we know how to share our content a little bit, let's talk a little bit about ownership and in maintenance of your tool, your package, or your content, your series of custom nodes. So when you create a package, especially one that goes onto the package manager, you have sort of a duty of care to maintain that package. And so while there is a license, MIT license that is attributed by default, you can also choose your own license, and that can sort of in some ways dictate how other users or end users use your package. But really, you have this duty of care to continue maintaining or to hand off or to sort of gracefully retire your package if you want to move on. Because other people, like Jacob said, are going to rely upon that package. So while there's going to be a static version of that package in time that users can use forever, as Dynamo evolves over the years and as Revit evolves and interactions change and paradigms change, that package may fall out of date. So maintaining and updating this package can really happen as much as you want. Ideally, you validate this for every release of Dynamo, so 2.11, 2.10, 2.12, and so on. But for the most part, these packages should persist and work in any version within the major version. So at the minimum, essentially, you really want to update for a major version change. So this is when we shifted from Dynamo 1.34 to Dynamo 2.0. There's a back-end change on how things work, and you'd want to go and make sure your package works or is upgraded and maintained in the new version of Dynamo. So at the bare minimum, like look to upgrade at the major releases. If your package is sort of simpler and doesn't have its hooks into too many different places, it's probably going to work fine moving forward into the future. So there's some packages out there like Dynamo Text. It hasn't been updated in 4.5 years. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's great because that package still works and still works fine 4.5 years later. So it's very efficient, package creation. So if you see, a package hasn't been updated for a very long time, don't worry. It just means that somebody's either built that in a very good way, or if they have decided to sort of retire and move on, it could potentially be that as well. So if you're in that kind of like realm where you've created this package and maybe your role changes, maybe the demands on your time have shifted, and maybe you have a family, or you've moved to another country, you've changed industries, whatever the reason may be. If you want to retire the package, there's a couple of different suggestions on how you could do that. So it depends on if you have a package that you're doing only internally. So as Jacob touched upon, you can send packages in various different ways. The package manager is public. And if it's public, maybe you don't want to share some content publicly. You only want to share it within your own sort of your office or series of offices around the world. If that's the case, then I would suggest, or we would suggest, that you hand over to an individual to maintain that package. If your office is smaller in nature, or if you have a larger office, suggest that you allocate a group to maintain that. So this could be something like a design technology team. And when they maintain that package, then your knowledge, your effort is not lost, and then that's evolved and upgraded over time, and other users can continue to use that awesome content that you have created. Now, if it's external on the package manager for the community, there's a couple of different pathways you could take here. So one of them is to find another person to take ownership of that package, somebody you trust or somebody who is passionate, or just as passionate as you are about creating this package and maintaining this package. And if you do that, you can actually reach out to us on the Dynamo team and request a new person become a maintainer of that package, which means you then get the ability to go and edit that when you log in using your Autodesk credentials. Another option to do if you don't have a person who you want to give ownership to is you can publish everything sort of globally on, say, GitHub, or to a location that is out there into the public, so people can see the logic and see how you went about building this content. Maybe you're hosting just direct DYF custom nodes on side of GitHub. Maybe you've created other kinds of custom nodes like C# custom nodes, and you want to have the source code up there as well. So it's another option. And then the last option is just to make it clear inside of your package that is no longer maintained. So it's kind of just a little like courtesy call back to the community to say, I have created this content in the past. It's no longer going to be maintained, but will still work for all previous versions with which it has been built for and has been tested in the latest version. So this version might be, say, Dynamo 2.5. You can say it works up until Dynamo 2.5 and then may work in the future. Fingers crossed, if I've built it correctly, it's going to work great for a time to come beyond that. In essence, the story here is just to be conscientious about the community. If you're building really cool things and they do really, really powerful workflows that do really awesome things, then other people are probably going to be using it, which is great, and they might be relying on that too. So if they're relying on it, just be conscientious about that and make sure you communicate your your shift in direction.
Cool. Well said, Sol. All right, so now that we understand sort of maintenance and that sort of stuff, let's talk about how we actually create our packages. In everything up until Dynamo 2.12, the process was to click up there on packages in your menu, and then you're going to say publish new package. From there, you're going to go ahead and set your package name, description, and keywords, add whatever files, custom nodes, references, documentation, and everything else, and then choose to publish it locally or online. The overall process looks something like this. We fill out our package name, fill out the description, fill out the version, major, minor, and build. What group do you want it in? What other references do you have? You know, is it Dynamo Revit, Civil 3D, Alias, etc.? Fill out your keywords and then add in your individual files and then choose to publish it either locally, meaning this isn't freely accessible. It isn't open to the entire public. It is something particular to me and my workflows or my office. And in that case, you have to go to sort of that manual distribution of this content. We've got to sort of deploy everything individually, or you know, publish it online, and that's when it gets up onto the package manager, kind of at the bigger scale, right? So you can see here in this case, I've put in the name tribute package. Put in the description, this is not the greatest package in the world. It is just a tribute to the greatest package in the world. Put what group I want it under. I'm going to put it under the greatest package in the world group in my library, just because, you know, it's associated to that. I've associated to all my different applications: Revit, Civil 3D, Alias, Advanced Steel, and Format. Gave it some keywords so that it'll help sort of show it up in search. Couldn't remember the best package in the world. Yeah, no. This is the tribute, and then filled out, you know, some website information, dynamobim.org, if people want to go find out information about this, right? Probably have something that's more relevant to your package than that, and then pick out the repository where you might sort of be able to download the source code. In my case, I'm pointing at the Dynamo BIM forums, and then again, that license. Again, the default license is the MIT license. In my case, I use the Chicken Dance CDL, which you can get the actual content in there in that extras folder where I've put the license.txt, which you can put right there, right? And that's the content that sort of indicates how your content can be used and redistributed, if it can be redistributed, and all that sort of stuff. So it's important to note as a package author when you start to put that content out there and how you put that content out there as well.
So now that we've talked about that a little bit, we can talk about the updating process for this. So depending on the version of Dynamo you're in, it's going to be maybe a little bit different. I'm using Dynamo 2.12, so this is what you'll see on screen right now. This is when we have the preferences panel added into Dynamo. So previous to this, if you just navigate to the packages folder, you should be able to navigate to the installed packages and be able to manage them from there as well. But from Dynamo 2.12 onwards, you get to go into the preferences panel and you get an installed packages list, as you see on screen in the upper right. And for each one of these packages, there's this context menu. And that context menu is those little 3 vertical dots on top of each other. And if you select a package that you have ownership of, you get the ability to publish or publish a version of that package. Now, those are grayed out features for packages that you don't own. And when you choose to publish a version, you get the ability to go and then do some of this updating that we talked about a little bit earlier. So it's the same dialogue, the same authoring dialogue that Jacob just showed to both author and update a package. And you simply just get to add more files or change some of the descriptions or any of the fields in there that you wish. So you're simply clicking a publish version here through the context menu accesses that again with the pre-filled in data you had from the first time around. And then after you've gone and updated your package, you really want to go and socialize this awesome update that you've made to your package. And there's many different pathways you can take. And some of those are on screen here, things such as the Dynamo forums. So in the civil world, MZ Jensen has created a cool package called Canva. And so he's going to socialize that inside of the Dynamo forums and just writes a post about exactly what is contained within that package and what the essence of the package is, what they're trying to achieve. You can publish this stuff out through Twitter. So Bimorph Digital Engineering has the Bimorph package, and they're going to blast that out over Twitter and just showcase a screenshot of kind of nodes they have, as well as a link to a blog post that they write on their own website to explain in detail the content that has gone into the package update. So socialize your awesome package updates so that users who are relying on it and love your package can definitely go and get the newest, latest, and greatest stuff that you have.
Cool. All right, great info there, Sol. Let's pop over and have a look at some custom nodes in action. All right, so this is sort of the first custom node that I've sort of put together. And this is a graph that basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to sort of make these sort of starburst, sort of snowflakey shapes sort of sequentially, right? And I wanted to be able to sort of control some of these pieces. So I wanted to be able to sort of scale up the size that's the wrong button. Scale up the size of my sort of piece, change the number of sides. We'll go ahead and switch this over to auto so it runs sort of instantaneously each time. If I wanted to adjust sort of the scale factor on any individual loop, right? And so we can start to get these kind of spirograph shapes and sort of scale patterns and whatever else it may be, which is pretty cool. Or if we were to change the number of iterations, right? Put less pieces on canvas, more pieces on canvas, whatever it may be, all through there. And users, you know, when you put this something with this degree of simplicity in front of a user, pretty much anybody could sort of figure out and play around with it and get some cool results, and likely even use that in their design if it meets the needs that they're really after. The harder part would be the original authoring, right? And that authoring in this case was several steps bigger. So this is the first one of those nested custom nodes that you can sort of see here. I did have, because I wanted to have some looping, and I mentioned before, be real careful with your loops, make sure they actually end. If you say, as long as this number is less than that number, keep doing this, and you've got your XY inputs backwards, Dynamo will lock up infinitely and you will never get out of it. So definitely keep an eye out for that kind of content. But you can see I've done some function passing where I've sort of built a function from list count and is the next value less than the number of iterations that I'm after, and then pass that on into this loop well to sort of use this other custom node, snowflake, scale, and rotate. And when I pop this open, you can see we've got more nodes, right? And this one, again, it isn't too crazy in terms of the content that's there, but the same content sort of still applies, right? We've got our basic output all the way over there. We've got our inputs over here. I've taken the time to sort of spell out what I want the descriptor to be, right? I've wrapped it in sort of multi-line quotes in case I wound up going multiple lines. So in this case, I can actually hit return there, and that content will sort of keep as a quote line. Whereas if I'd use the other method of sort of double backslash, we would have to double backslash repeatedly in order to make that work, right? So definitely better if you think you might have multi-lines, go ahead and just multi-line it out early on. Just makes your life a little bit easier. So this comment is what gets exposed on this input, right? The points which form the basis of the snowflake. And if I come back here, the points which will form the basis of the snowflake, right? The scale factor for the nested snowflake framework, and then the scale factor for the nested flake framework. Note there are multiple lines there, and this is pretty well scaled to the size that those inputs will go. So if your text starts to run long, your content may start to run long in terms of the help, but really useful info there. And then we've got the same sort of content on our output ports, right? And again, we're doing this custom node inside a custom node inside a custom node so that we can make use of that other content. But you can see here, I've sort of set what that output is. I've kind of named what I want it to be. And that's the sort of content that really matters to sort of help this scale up. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Yes, I will save changes for now, and then we'll look at the next custom node. So we've passed this as a function into do this function over and over and over again, as long as this statement continues to evaluate to be true, with this as our input, which we're bringing in a nested list of points. Notice I did have to spell out my rank reduction or my rank in there as well. And I generated a standard value, right? And it's a pretty big one, right? That's a lot of text in there. I wouldn't necessarily expect everybody to know what that means, but it does get the point across, and it does allow this content to run if I don't provide one of those input values. So anyways, we loop over that function that we built there X amount of times, and we move into this snowflake make shape node, and we open this up one more time, and then you can sort of see all that content is there, right? One more time, and where we've sort of taken our list of points in terms of the nested list of points, and then the vertical offset of each leaf. I've got sort of set up there, not really doing much with that, but there you have it, and then sort of running this all the way over. Eventually getting my output that I've set as just snowflake with nothing else going on. So now when I come back here, you can see we're then going to clean that content up, flatten the list, shuffle the list in case I wanted to put some fun colors on it or something like that, and then set that output. And I also spell out what this should be. It should be a list of curves, not an individual curve. And this is going to sort of enable autocomplete to work a little bit more holistically while simultaneously providing that other kind of piece of content. So now when we get in here, you can sort of see how all that works. And again, all of these pieces that I've sort of nested one inside the other all happen sequentially for every user. I'm going to do one other thing. So we're going to look back at our original order here. We've got initial value, scale factor, and iterations. In this piece, if I was to take iterations as the last one, but it's sort of listed in the middle here. So let's try and reverse these two. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this node, and then we can just hold down Shift and drag in where we want this to be. Notice that background execution that happened there as I moved this around. That wasn't this node actually updating itself. There's no way for me to hit run here. That was this node that's actually running in the background is actually what's executing. So we'll come back here. Now that I've got this one, we'll go ahead and we'll hit delete. We'll save on that. And looks like as I did that, I may have actually broken my content. Let's come back here and find out. We'll change this run mode back one more time. Scale factor is now listed below, whereas iterations is up above. As long as the value is less than 1, okay, that's definitely not going to work, right? So that change right there and just sort of copying pasting is what caused that content to sort of go out of sync, right? And that method of sort of doing the copy paste is what you'd sort of have to do to adjust those variables. That's sort of the user interface way. You can do it under the hood by manipulating the text, but that's definitely much more advanced as you go along. But from here, this content, again, can be leveraged at scale. You don't have to worry quite so much about you doing that content over and over and over again. Another thing we can do here, if we come back all the way to this snowflake make shape, if instead of having sort of the wavy curves, let's say we wanted to have something that's a little bit more angular, I'm going to go ahead and set up a new input. And we'll comment out what we want this input to be. Use the rounded form or the polygonal form. So we're going to use the rounded form or the polygonal form. We'll go down one more line, and then we're going to call this rounded. It is a bool. The default value is true. Right? Content all runs through there. Now I've got this node here that's set up to sort of do pass as a function into the function apply. We'll use a polygon by points node. This also can take a list of points, right? And then I'm going to take both of these functions and I'm going to say if. Put an if node on canvas, and if this returns true, we're going to return the rounded one. Otherwise, we're going to return the polygons. These are backwards, and I really dislike crisscross lines. So I'm going to go ahead and move those around. No more crisscross lines. Much happier as a human being once that happens. So now we can take our if node, wire that into the function. And if this returns true, it's going to do that. If that returns false, it's going to do that. And now I've got a new input inside this make sides node, right? I'll go ahead and close this, saving the changes. And if I pop back here, notice I now have this rounded input, and it is telling me it's looking for a bool. It's telling me what it's expecting the default value to be, and it is currently a disabled default value. We can go ahead and right click and tell it to use that default value. We can turn it back off if we wanted to, but really what we need is we need another input node, right? So we'll come in and say input once more. And then this is a little bit redundant because we're sort of putting the thing inside the thing, and we need to set that up. We're going to call this out as rounded input. Sorry, use rounded result. Forget what I called the last one. Then we'll come back down here, and then we're going to call this rounded. Set what we want the default value type to be. It is a bool. And we're going to call that true as the default value. Wire this in there. No longer passing that as a function, so this should be good to go. We'll save this once more. And then back here, I now have this other input. So now we can put a true false on here and quickly say, yep, false, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass the polygonal version, which is a little bit slower to run, but still pretty cool, right? It starts to look maybe a little bit more snowflakey in some ways, a little bit more flowery in other ways, but this is part of a larger workflow that I'm building based on a snowflakes post that was built up posted to the Dynamo forum recently. But you can kind of see how that process sort of works out in terms of allowing users to sort of quickly scale up for whatever it may be that they're after, which is pretty cool. All right, I did see something in the chat. Good to know I'm not the only one who spends this much time arranging nodes so wires look good. Yeah, I spend a lot of time. If you ever see me, like when I've got a bunch of stuff like that and like it's misorganized like this, Monocle has that great feature to sort of align stuff, but I use my Alt command. So I tap Alt on my keyboard and then E and then A and then T, and that will align top, or Alt EAL will bring it all to the left, or EAR, bring it all to the right, so on and so forth. I spend tons of time organizing my graph, because if you can't understand where the nodes are and make it sort of the logic quickly readable, it can be really, really difficult to fix problems as they present themselves, which they inevitably will.
There's also a good reason to use custom nodes, because that means you have to do less of that, and it also helps with exactly the same sort of problem or solution, if you will, by making it easier to read and easier to use.
Yep. All right, so we've got 9 minutes. I don't know that's enough for me to get to that other demo that we were going to show Sol with your polygon piece.
Totally cool.
We'll see if we can distribute these. Maybe I'll put them in the tribute package later today if people want to play around with them.
Awesome. So on that note, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, chat, or write in the chat window. More than happy to answer anything on screen or on stream today.
I think one other thing to sort of touch on, I don't know that we really talked about it, was the capability to write zero-touch nodes as well. Which, you know, again, it's a different type of sort of producing the work, right? We've got the capability, we could have put Python nodes in those custom nodes as well, but with zero-touch nodes, you can do even more cool stuff, and they do get a little bit quicker, but there is a much larger bar for entry, right? It takes a lot more sort of prep and setup. If you guys think back to the session last week with all the Python stuff, it was like every time you start to talk about something, oh, don't forget about this or that or this or that. It's even more.
Yeah, there's a lot of rabbit holes.
Content. Yeah, and so there's tons of value in there, but it's not sort of the sort of thing we can really push quickly over a webinar like this, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the other point is that if you know how to use Dynamo, if you use Dynamo and you can build 2 or 3 different graphs, then you're pretty close to being able to do a custom node as well. All you really need to learn is the inputs and the outputs, like we have shown you today. You know, you review what you've seen today, you mull on it, you digest it, and then go and have a go. Go and try and make something. You know, make something silly, like make a snowflake. Why not?
Definitely make a snowflake and post it to the Dynamo forum, please. I like the snowflakes.
So we have a question in the chat from Adam. So where did the name Zero Touch come from? It doesn't seem to be a no touch type of creation. Yeah, it's just a little bit of a misnomer. Unfortunately, it's not true Zero Touch, but in essence, there's a framework that automatically creates all of the UI and the nodes in the background. All you have to do is write some sort of functional code in the center using C#.
Yeah, it's more around the framework that consumes it to get you the appearance. Right? You don't have to say, this is how big I want this particular aspect of the node to be. This is the input size and stuff like that, right? So
yeah, exactly. So the framework is covering and essentially all of the UI. All you have to do is figure out what you want the node to do, and everything else is handled by Dynamo.
Low touch might be
well, I think yeah, we're moving away from zero touch and just starting to call them sort of C# nodes. That's sort of a safer way to approach that. But custom nodes today are very low bar to entry as far as creating custom content. And I would suggest you just start exploring them. They're very fun. They can do really interesting things like Jacob showed today. You can nest them. You can make really complex things. You can hide that, and you can make your users be much happier rather than navigating a sort of 100 node graph. They might only have to navigate like a 6 node graph, and then it just does all the cool stuff in the background. And as far as execution goes, they're essentially very similar. You'll get a minor performance gain by using custom nodes, because the rendering of each node inside of them isn't going to happen. So you're going to get a little bit of performance boost, but essentially it's about the same.
So
go ahead.
I think that no touch falls in line with also the name of our company. We're not a desk and we're not auto. So
yeah, we're thematically consistent.
Great
Awesome
point,
stuff.
Sean. Great point.
All right, so if we have no questions, then I guess we can show the last couple of sessions that we have lined up for this year and talk through those.
There we go.
All right, so we have 2 more Dynamo sessions to round out 2021. And then that is going to be around how to make Dynamo sing. So if we just touched upon performance, this session is going to be focused really around, like, as a user, what can you do to impact Dynamo and make it work better? So this is like nodes executing faster, actions to take to slow down some of the memory consumption and the rendering usage inside of Dynamo as well. So if you have a really heavy duty graph, this is going to help you make it work at a better rate. We're also going to touch upon what you can't touch upon and work through, which is what we do on the Dynamo team to try and make it more performant and use less memory over time, just to sort of educate the kind of component pieces that go into how Dynamo works. So it should be a really interesting and fun one. And then we also have a wrap up for 2021. And so this is going to be more of a conversation, less of a presentation. We're just going to hang out and chat, and over the course of the entirety of 2021, what did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? What would you like to see for the upcoming new year? Because the focus on the upcoming 2022 year is going to be more around host stuff. So to date, we have covered sort of very, not generic, but like core features of Dynamo, where, custom nodes and object types and strings and a bunch of nodes and wires and all that good stuff. That is the foundation for Dynamo. And then moving into next year, we're looking to apply it. And so as we apply it into the host space, you'll be able to start to see awesome results and applications on how you can really truly impact your coalface, workday, getting work done, doing really cool things and saving time and sanity in the process. So please do come on us with the journey for these last 2 sessions this year and into next.
Oh, great timing for a siren. All right. Well, we'll wrap up today's session with 2 more final slides. Looking for other ways to connect and engage in the Autodesk community, we have a few resources for you. You can explore the various Autodesk communities, including the global network of user groups in the Autodesk Group Network, our industry-focused communities, helping colleagues solve business challenges together, the Autodesk forums, of course, and stay connected with us on Twitter and Facebook, including several new Facebook groups that are specific to products. Also, if you're interested in presenting your own community conversation, Diana posted a link on how to suggest one to us. So next, we're going to also have a survey. So that survey is really important, for helping us shape how we build out the program. We're going to tune and make it even more responsive to what you want to see as content and helpful for the hosts. So thank you for attending, everybody. Again, fill out the little survey there, and we'll be posting the YouTube video by tomorrow. Sometimes takes a bit for Zoom to get it to us, and then I have to post it up into our YouTube channel and then add it onto our page, and then I'll send out a notification. So I do hope to see you guys in the next session. And thanks, Saul and Jacob and Diana. Jacob, I love this, the snowflake. That was really cool. Geometrically, I love those kind of things. I was still waiting for you to do the chicken dance, though.
I gave it a little thing during the when I was talking about the package manager.
Yeah. I mean, we could have resorted to, I think Amanda's chickens aren't with her. So we could have had chickens actually on the screen, but I think we have bears, and bears and chickens don't go together.
No, that's why the chickens are at home. So yeah, just give me a little bit of warning next time, you guys. I'm prepared now. I know what this whole thing is about. So just wait till next time.
Thank you.
All right,
everybody,
for joining. Appreciate it. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.